It was a late evening, and the air had already turned chilly. Emma sat alone in the dimly lit kitchen, sipping a cup of lukewarm tea. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the floorboards. Her husband, Tom, was away on a business trip, and she had spent the entire day going over mundane household chores, trying to keep herself busy. It was supposed to be a peaceful evening, but deep inside, Emma felt an unexplainable unease. She glanced at the clock. It was almost 9 p.m. She had just finished texting Tom, asking him if he'd made it to his hotel yet, when the phone suddenly rang. It wasn't a sound she was expecting. The ringtone was loud, slicing through the silence, making her jump. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she checked the number. It was unfamiliar, nothing like the usual contacts from Tom or her family. For a moment, she hesitated. The number wasn't saved, and it was unusual for anyone to call her this late. But curiosity got the best of her, and she answered the call. "Hello?" Emma said, trying to sound casual, though she could feel a knot tightening in her stomach. The voice on the other end was low and measured, almost too calm. "Is this Emma?" "Yes," she replied, now more alert. "Who is this?" "I'm Officer Harris," the voice said, sending a shiver down Emma's spine. "I'm calling about your husband." Her heart skipped a beat. Her mind raced, trying to process the words. Her husband? Tom? She had spoken to him earlier that day, and everything seemed fine. He was away, yes, but he was supposed to be working, nothing out of the ordinary. She suddenly felt like she was missing a piece of the puzzle. "Wait, what's going on? Is Tom okay?" Emma's voice cracked, betraying her rising panic. The officer didn't answer right away. There was an eerie pause, one that seemed to stretch for far too long, like he was choosing his next words carefully. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted, and it was darker, more serious. "There's been an incident," Officer Harris said. "We need to talk to you about your husband. It's urgent." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. She stood up from her chair, her hands shaking, unsure of whether to sit or stand. "What kind of incident? What happened to him?" she demanded, her voice now higher with anxiety. "I can't give you all the details over the phone," the officer continued. "But I need you to stay where you are. We'll send someone to speak with you shortly. I just wanted to give you a heads up. There's something you need to know. Something that could change everything." Emma's knees felt weak. The room suddenly felt much smaller, as if the walls were closing in on her. She gripped the phone tighter, barely able to breathe. Her mind spun with 1,000 questions, none of which made sense. What was happening? Was Tom in trouble? Why hadn't he told her anything? She wanted to ask more, to demand answers, but the officer had already hung up. The line went dead. Emma stood there, the phone pressed to her ear, staring at the screen. Her thoughts were a jumble of confusion and dread. Her husband, Tom, the man she thought she knew so well, was now at the center of something that didn't make sense. Something was wrong. Something was terribly wrong. She looked around the room as if the walls would offer an explanation, but they remained silent, cold, and indifferent. She put the phone down and grabbed her coat, her mind racing. There was no way she was just going to wait for a stranger to show up. She needed answers. Before she could make any decision, the phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call but a text message from Tom. It read, "Sorry I couldn't answer earlier. Had an emergency meeting. Everything's fine. I'll call you soon." Relief washed over her for a moment, but the nagging feeling in her stomach wouldn't go away. Why had the officer mentioned Tom's name? And why had Tom seemed so distant in his message, as if something were off? With trembling hands, she typed back, "Are you okay? I just got a call from someone who said you were in trouble." The text went through, but there was no response. Emma stared at her phone, her mind whirling. Was Tom truly okay? Or was something hiding beneath the surface? A knock at the door jolted her back to reality. The sound was firm, urgent, and unsettling. She wasn't expecting anyone, at least, not yet. She hesitated, heart pounding in her chest. Could it be the officer? Or someone else? Could it be someone else with more answers? Her feet carried her to the door before she could fully process what she was doing. She opened it to find a man in a dark suit, his expression unreadable, almost too professional. He looked like he had been through 100 similar situations, though something about his eyes didn't seem as impersonal as his appearance. "Mrs. Sinclair?" he asked, his voice flat and businesslike. "Yes," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" "I'm Detective Roberts," the man replied, showing her his badge. "We spoke to your husband earlier today, but we need to discuss something with you in person." Emma swallowed hard. What is this about? Why didn't Tom say anything? Why didn't he tell me? The detective didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped inside the house, his demeanor calm but firm. "It's complicated. We'll explain everything, but you need to be prepared for what's coming." Prepared? Prepared for what? What could possibly be so serious that it couldn't be told over the phone? As the detective sat down, Emma's thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and disbelief. She had always thought she knew her husband, his habits, his routines, his secrets. But this call, this moment, it shattered everything she thought she knew. "Please," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "Just tell me. What is this all about?" The detective exchanged a glance with the officer standing behind him, then turned back to Emma. "Your husband isn't who you think he is," he said bluntly. "And what we found today is just the beginning." Emma's blood ran cold. Her mind went blank. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The room seemed to tilt beneath her feet, as if the ground itself had disappeared. I don't understand," she whispered, shaking her head. The detective continued, his voice steady and firm. "There's a lot you don't know about your husband, Emma. And we need you to help us put the pieces together." Emma's world shattered with his words. She couldn't process them, couldn't understand them. All she knew was that this was only the beginning. A truth she never imagined was about to unfold, and she had no idea just how deep the mystery would go. As the detective continued to speak, Emma felt her grip on reality slipping. Everything she had known, everything she had trusted, was now in question. What had Tom been hiding from her? What secrets had he buried so deep, only for her to find them when it was too late? And what would she do now, knowing that her life was about to change forever? Emma sat across from Detective Roberts, her mind still reeling from the shocking revelation. Her thoughts were tangled in confusion, and the silence in the room was deafening. The detective's presence, though professional, was unsettling. His cold gaze fixed on her, as though he was waiting for her to absorb what he had just said. "Your husband isn't who you think he is," he repeated, his tone calm but forceful. "And what we found today is just the beginning." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The words echoed in her head, looping in an endless spiral of disbelief. "Not who I think he is?" Her fingers trembled as she gripped the edge of the chair, willing herself to stay grounded. She couldn't look at the detective, she couldn't even look at the officer standing behind him. All she could focus on was the crushing weight of the words that had just shattered her reality. The detective cleared his throat, breaking the silence that had settled over them. "We've been investigating your husband for some time now, Emma. He's involved in something much bigger than you could imagine. Something dangerous." Her heart skipped a beat. Dangerous? What did he mean by that? Tom had always been so ordinary. She thought she knew everything about him, his job, his schedule, his life. Sure, there were things he kept to himself, but who didn't? Everyone had their secrets. But this? This was something different. "What are you saying?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What kind of trouble is he in?" Detective Roberts leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "I wish I could give you more answers, Emma, but it's complicated. We can't tell you everything just yet. But what I can tell you is that your husband's actions have led us to believe that he's connected to a much larger operation. An operation that's been running for years." Emma felt the room start to spin. Her breath quickened, and she struggled to keep her composure. She wanted to scream at the detective, to demand he explain everything right now, but the words stuck in her throat. She had to know more, she had to understand what was happening to her husband, to her life. "Who is he working for?" she asked, her voice shaking. "What's he involved in?" The detective exchanged a quick glance with the officer behind him before speaking again. "We believe your husband is connected to a criminal syndicate. A powerful one. And this syndicate has connections all over the world. He's been involved with them for years, Emma. That's why we need your help." Emma's head was spinning. A criminal syndicate? Her husband? Tom had always been so ordinary, so normal. There was nothing about him that screamed danger. He was kind, responsible, loving. Or so she thought. How could she have missed something so huge? "I don't understand," she said, shaking her head in disbelief. "This doesn't make sense. Tom wouldn't do something like that." "I know this is hard to believe," Detective Roberts said, his voice softening slightly. "But the evidence we've gathered suggests otherwise. We've been tracking his movements, his connections, and everything points to him being deeply involved with this organization. And the worst part is, we think he's in danger now." In danger? Emma's mind raced, trying to grasp the enormity of the situation. "What do you mean? What's going to happen to him?" The detective hesitated before answering. "We don't know yet, but we suspect that he's been caught in something much bigger than he realizes. Something dangerous. The people he's working with, they won't hesitate to hurt him, or you, if they feel threatened." Emma's chest tightened. Her? Why would they come after her? She was just the wife, just the innocent bystander in all of this. Or so she thought. "Why are you telling me all of this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want me to do?" "We need your help to get to the bottom of this," the detective said, his gaze steady. "We need you to talk to your husband. We believe he's hiding something from you, something important. We need you to help us find out what it is." Emma felt like she was drowning in a sea of confusion. Talk to Tom? How could she confront him with this? How could she ask him about something so dark, so dangerous, when she had no idea what the truth really was? "I don't know if I can do that," she said quietly, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know if I can trust him anymore." Detective Roberts's expression softened slightly, though his tone remained firm. "I know this isn't easy. But you need to understand, Emma, your husband's life is at risk. And so is yours." A cold shiver ran down Emma's spine. She hadn't realized it before, but the magnitude of what the detective was saying was starting to sink in. The life she had built with Tom, the love she thought they shared, could be a lie. Could he really be part of something so dark, so dangerous? Could she really trust him to come back to her, to be the man she thought he was? The detective stood up, signaling to the officer that it was time to leave. "We'll be in touch," he said. "And I know this is a lot to take in. But I need you to think about what I've said. We'll be back soon, and when we come back, we'll need your help." Emma barely registered the words. She couldn't tear her gaze away from the detective, who was already walking toward the door. Her world felt like it was crumbling, and the only thing she could hold on to was the idea that Tom might still be the man she thought he was. But deep down, Emma knew the truth was more complicated than that. And whatever the truth was, it was about to change everything. As the detective and officer left, Emma sank back into the chair, her hands still trembling. She felt like she was on the edge of a cliff, looking down into a dark abyss. Every piece of her life, every moment she had shared with Tom, was now in question. Who was he really? And what had he been hiding from her all this time? The phone buzzed again, pulling Emma from her thoughts. She grabbed it, hoping it was Tom. She needed to hear his voice. She needed something to hold on to. But when she checked the screen, her heart skipped a beat. It wasn't Tom. It was a text from an unknown number. The message read, "I know what you're going through. I can help you find out the truth. But you need to trust me." Emma's heart raced. Was this someone else involved in whatever Tom was mixed up in? Or was it someone who knew more than she did? She didn't know if she could trust this person, but she also didn't know if she had any other choice. With trembling fingers, she typed a reply, "Who is this? What do you know?" The reply came quickly, "Meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the old warehouse on Oak Street. I'll tell you everything." Emma stared at the screen, her thoughts in turmoil. She had no idea who this person was, but if they had information about Tom, she couldn't ignore it. She had to find out the truth, no matter the cost. Emma's heart raced as she stared at the text on her phone. "Meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the old warehouse on Oak Street. I'll tell you everything." Her fingers shook as she held the phone, trying to comprehend what this anonymous person might know about Tom and the dangerous world he was allegedly involved in. She had no choice. If this person held the key to uncovering the truth, she needed to meet them. But something deep inside her was afraid. Every instinct told her to stay away. The unknown, the secrecy, it all seemed too dangerous. But the thought of never knowing, of not having answers, gnawed at her. She couldn't live like that. She needed to find out what had happened to her life, to her husband. And she needed to do it now. The night before the meeting, Emma barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind swirled with possibilities. Who could this person be? What did they know? Was this some kind of trap? Or were they truly on her side? By the time morning arrived, Emma felt as if she hadn't rested at all. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her thoughts were clouded with confusion. She tried to eat breakfast, but the food didn't sit right in her stomach. She was on edge, pacing back and forth in her apartment. Every sound made her jump, every shadow felt like it was hiding something. At exactly 2 p.m., Emma found herself standing in front of the old warehouse on Oak Street. The building was worn down, abandoned, and had a menacing air to it. The rusted metal door and broken windows gave it an eerie, forgotten feel, and as she stood there, she couldn't help but wonder what kind of secrets it hid. She looked around. The street was quiet, too quiet. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever was to come. She knew she couldn't turn back now. Stepping toward the door, she hesitated for a moment, her hand on the handle. Her mind raced. Was this a mistake? Should she walk away? But just as she was about to pull her hand back, the door creaked open. A shadow moved inside, and she could barely make out a figure standing in the dim light. "Emma," a voice called out, low and familiar. She froze. The voice was soft, almost soothing, yet something about it didn't sit right. She didn't recognize it, but it was unmistakably male. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Come inside," the voice replied. "I won't bite." Emma swallowed hard, but her curiosity overpowered her fear. She stepped inside the warehouse, the heavy door shutting behind her with a resounding thud. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from a single, flickering bulb above. It cast long shadows across the room, making everything seem more sinister. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she saw him, standing by a stack of old crates. His face was partially obscured by a hood, but Emma could make out enough to know that he was not someone she recognized. He was tall, with broad shoulders, and wore a dark jacket that blended into the shadows. "Who are you?" Emma asked again, her voice stronger this time. "And how do you know about Tom?" The man stepped closer, revealing more of his features. He wasn't young, but his eyes had a sharpness to them, an intensity that made Emma uneasy. "I know about Tom because I've been watching him for a long time," he said, his voice low and steady. "And I know he's in danger. But you're the key to everything." Emma's pulse quickened. She took a cautious step back. "What are you talking about? What do you mean, I'm the key?" He tilted his head slightly, as if he were trying to gauge her reaction. "You're the only one who can help us get to the truth. Your husband isn't who you think he is. You've been living in a lie, Emma. And now, you're involved whether you want to be or not." Her mind spun. A lie? Her husband, Tom, the man she loved, wasn't who he seemed? The detective had warned her, but this was too much. It felt impossible to believe. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on with him? Who is he really?" The man's eyes flickered to the side, and then back to her. "You need to understand, Emma, that your husband isn't just a small-time guy caught up in something. He's a pawn in a much bigger game. The people he's working for, they're ruthless. They've been watching him, manipulating him for years." "Who are they?" Emma asked urgently, stepping forward now, desperate for answers. The man's lips tightened into a grim line. "I can't give you all the details just yet, but what I can tell you is that they're after something. Something big. And your husband is caught in the middle of it." The words hung in the air, heavy with a sense of impending danger. Emma's heart raced, her thoughts spinning. What could they want with Tom? Why him? "I need to know more," she said, her voice breaking. "I need to know what's going to happen to him." The man's expression softened for a moment, as if he understood her pain. "The truth is, Emma, I can't promise you anything. What's happening now is out of your control. But I can tell you this, you need to be careful. The people after your husband, after both of you, will stop at nothing to get what they want. And they're closer than you think." Emma's mind reeled. Her world had been turned upside down in just a matter of days. From the moment the detective had told her about Tom's secrets, to this mysterious man offering cryptic warnings, nothing made sense. She needed more. She needed to understand why all of this was happening. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding in her chest. "I need you to trust me," he said. "I've been trying to help your husband. But he's in too deep. And now, it's up to you to make sure he doesn't get swallowed whole by the people after him. If you do nothing, you risk losing everything." Emma's head swam with the weight of his words. She wanted to scream, to run away, to forget this whole nightmare. But something in the man's expression, something in his eyes, told her she had no choice. She was in this whether she liked it or not. "I'll help you," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "I'll do whatever it takes." The man nodded once, his expression grim. "Good. But remember this, time is running out. The longer you wait, the more dangerous it gets for both of you. Trust no one but me." As the words sank in, Emma felt a cold chill creep down her spine. She wasn't sure who this man was or whether she could trust him, but the danger surrounding her and Tom was real. And now, she was part of something much bigger than herself. "I'll be in touch," the man said, turning toward the shadows. "And Emma? Don't trust anyone, not even your husband." With that, he disappeared into the darkness of the warehouse, leaving Emma standing there alone, more uncertain than ever. The air felt thick, oppressive, as though the very walls were closing in on her. She didn't know what would happen next, but she did know one thing for certain: she couldn't turn back now. Whatever this was, it was only just beginning. The days following the meeting at the warehouse were a blur of confusion and anxiety for Emma. Each morning, she woke up with a feeling of dread, her mind constantly racing with questions. Who was the man at the warehouse? Could she trust him? And more importantly, what exactly had she gotten herself into? She couldn't stop thinking about the warning he had given her. Trust no one, but me. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how isolated she had become. Tom had always been the one person she could turn to, but now even he felt distant. He had been hiding something from her, and though she didn't want to admit it, she feared that the man's words were true. Tom wasn't the person she had believed him to be. She had to face it: her life was no longer the peaceful, simple one she had imagined. The house felt empty without Tom, and Emma couldn't bring herself to call him. She had no idea how to act around him now, given everything she had learned. She needed answers, but she wasn't sure where to start. It was late afternoon on a Wednesday when her phone rang unexpectedly. Emma had been sitting at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the setting sun. The sound of her phone broke the silence, and she quickly picked it up, hoping for some form of relief. The number was unfamiliar, but her instincts told her to answer. "Hello?" she said, her voice hesitant. "Emma?" The voice on the other end of the line was familiar, Tom's voice. But it sounded strained, almost as though he was calling from a great distance. "Tom?" she asked, her heart racing. "Where are you? What's going on?" I can't talk about it right now," he said, his voice sounding more like a whisper. "Listen to me, Emma. They're coming for me. You have to leave. You have to go somewhere safe. They're watching everything." The fear in his voice sent a chill down Emma's spine. She'd never heard Tom sound like this before, so desperate, so broken. "Who's coming for you?" she asked, panic rising in her chest. "What's going on, Tom?" "I can't say over the phone," he replied, his voice shaking. "You don't understand. I've made mistakes. Big ones. And now, I'm in too deep. They won't stop until they get what they want. But Emma, I swear, I never wanted this for us." The line crackled, and Emma's heart raced. She had never heard Tom sound so defeated. She wanted to ask more questions, to demand answers, but the fear in his voice told her that every second counted. "Where are you?" she asked urgently. "Where can I find you?" "I can't tell you that," Tom replied quickly. "You have to trust me. You need to leave the house. Now. Don't ask questions. Just go. Find somewhere safe. I'll reach out when I can." Emma stood up, pacing around the kitchen, trying to think clearly. "Tom, I don't know what's going on. But you need to tell me what's happening. I can't just leave." "Please, Emma," he said, his voice breaking. "They're already here. If you stay, you're in danger, too." Her breath caught in her throat. "Who is they, Tom? Please, I need to know." There was a long pause before he spoke again, the words barely audible. "I love you, Emma. But if you stay, you might not make it out alive. Please." The line went dead. Emma stood there, frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. The silence in the house felt suffocating. What had just happened? Tom had never been this scared before. He was always the strong one, the protector. Now he was the one asking for help. But what could she do? Her mind raced as she thought about the mysterious man who had warned her. She hadn't told Tom about that meeting, and part of her wondered if the man at the warehouse knew something she didn't. Could he have been right? Was Tom really in danger? Were the people after him the same ones the man had warned her about? Without wasting another second, Emma grabbed her keys and ran out of the house. Her car was parked in the driveway, and she started the engine, her hands gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Where was she supposed to go? She had no idea. The only thing she knew for sure was that Tom was in trouble, and he was asking her to leave. He had begged her to stay away from him, to protect herself. But Emma couldn't just abandon him. Not after everything they had been through. Her phone buzzed again, and she jumped, nearly swerving off the road. She quickly glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number, but she answered it without hesitation. "Hello?" she said, trying to steady her breath. "Emma," a deep voice said. It wasn't Tom's, but it was someone she recognized. It was the man from the warehouse. "Where's Tom?" Emma demanded, her voice shaky with fear. "What's happening?" "Calm down," the man said, his voice calm and measured. "We don't have much time. You're in danger. You need to leave the city. I'll tell you where to go." Emma gripped the phone tighter. "I'm not going anywhere until I know what's going on. Who are these people? Why are they after us?" "You don't have time for all the details," the man said, his tone becoming urgent. "Just know this, the people after Tom, they're dangerous. They've been tracking him for years. And now, they know about you, too. They'll stop at nothing to get what they want." "Information," the man replied. "Tom knows something they can't afford for him to keep hidden. And you've gotten involved because of him. They'll do whatever it takes to get what they need. But you don't have to be part of it. If you do what I say, you can stay safe." Emma's heart was pounding now, every word sending a wave of fear through her. She didn't know what to believe. The man at the warehouse seemed to know more than she did, but could he be trusted? And if Tom was really in danger, why hadn't he told her everything? "Where should I go?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'll send you the details," the man said. "And Emma, don't trust anyone. Not even Tom. Not anymore." The line went dead again, and Emma's stomach churned. She had no choice now. She had to make a decision. She had to act fast. The road ahead was dark, and Emma had no idea where she was going. But she knew one thing for certain, nothing would ever be the same again. The drive felt endless. Emma's mind was in overdrive, her thoughts racing faster than the wheels of her car. The man on the phone had made one thing crystal clear: she couldn't trust anyone, not even Tom. She felt the weight of his words pressing down on her chest, threatening to suffocate her. But how could she not trust Tom? He was the person she had shared everything with, the person who had promised to protect her no matter what. Yet, the more she thought about it, the more doubts began to surface. Tom had kept things from her, things that, if she had known, might have made a difference. Things that might have prevented her from being dragged into this mess in the first place. The city skyline loomed ahead, but Emma didn't feel comforted by the familiar view. She had no idea where she was going, only that the man on the phone had told her to drive south, away from everything she knew. There were no signs, no directions, just vague instructions and a deepening sense of dread. As the night settled in, Emma's thoughts returned to Tom. What had he been involved in? Why had he kept so many secrets from her? And most importantly, why had he never mentioned the danger he was in? Was it all a lie? Was she just another pawn in a dangerous game she didn't understand? The more questions Emma asked herself, the more she questioned everything she thought she knew about the man she loved. It felt as though her entire world was falling apart around her, and she had no idea how to piece it back together. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every time she looked into her rearview mirror, she half expected to see headlights behind her, following her every move. She couldn't shake the paranoia, but she kept driving, pushing through the fear and uncertainty. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, Emma pulled into a small, secluded motel. The neon sign flickered overhead, casting a faint glow over the parking lot. The place looked old and run down, but it was all she could afford. She needed a place to rest, a moment to clear her mind before deciding what to do next. Her phone buzzed again. The screen lit up with an unknown number, and her heart skipped a beat. It was the same number from earlier, the one belonging to the man who had warned her. She quickly answered, holding her breath as the line clicked. "Emma," the man's voice came through, calm but urgent. "I told you to leave the city. You shouldn't be there. You're putting yourself in more danger." "I had to stop," Emma replied, her voice strained. "I needed to think. I need answers. Who are these people, and what do they want from Tom?" The man was silent for a moment, as if weighing his next words carefully. "I'm not sure you're ready for the truth, but I'll tell you what I can. Tom's involvement goes deeper than you realize. He's not just a bystander. He's been part of something much bigger, something he's been hiding from you for a long time." Emma's heart skipped. "What do you mean? What is he involved in?" "It's complicated," the man continued. "But Tom's been working with people who have connections to powerful groups. These groups are not interested in just money or power, they want control. They're willing to do anything to get what they want, and Tom has been helping them, whether knowingly or not. He's a key player in their game, and they'll stop at nothing to make sure their interests are protected." Emma felt like she was drowning in a sea of confusion. Her thoughts spiraled out of control as she tried to process what the man was saying. Tom, her Tom, was involved in something shady, something dangerous? Could it really be true? "Why would he do this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why would he keep it from me? Why didn't he tell me?" "I don't have all the answers," the man said, his voice softening. "But I think deep down, Tom never wanted you to know. He was trying to protect you from the truth, even if that meant keeping you in the dark. But the truth is, you're already in this. You're already part of it, whether you want to be or not." "Why me?" Emma whispered, feeling the tears welling up in her eyes. "Why did he involve me in all of this?" "I don't know," the man replied. "But I do know this, you're more important than you realize. And right now, you need to make a choice. You need to decide if you're going to fight or if you're going to walk away." The line went dead again. Emma's hands were shaking as she lowered the phone, staring blankly at the screen. She felt like the world was crashing down around her. How had things gotten so complicated? How had the life she knew turned into a nightmare? The motel room felt suffocating. She couldn't stay there any longer, not with the weight of everything hanging over her head. She had to find Tom. She had to understand what had happened and why he had kept so many secrets from her. But where could she find him? How could she even begin to understand the mess they were both caught up in? Emma pulled herself together, wiping away the tears that had started to fall. She wasn't going to let fear control her. She wasn't going to let the unknown drag her down. With a deep breath, she stood up and grabbed her bag, determined to get answers. She couldn't trust anyone, but she knew one thing for sure: she needed to find Tom. She needed to confront him, face to face, and hear the truth from him. She stepped out of the motel room and into the cold night air, the weight of the unknown hanging heavily on her shoulders. She didn't know where she was going, but she couldn't stop. She couldn't turn back now. As she walked toward her car, her phone buzzed once more. This time, it was a text message. The words were brief, but they struck her to the core. "They're watching you. Don't trust anyone, not even Tom." Her breath caught in her throat as she looked around, her eyes scanning the shadows. Was someone really watching her? Was she being followed? Her mind raced with 100 questions. But one thing was clear: she was no longer safe, and neither was Tom. She had to act fast. The truth was out there, waiting for her to uncover it. But would she survive long enough to find it? The cold night air cut through Emma as she stood outside the motel, her breath visible in the darkness. Her phone buzzed in her hand once more. She didn't need to check it to know that it was a warning, another message, another chilling reminder of the danger she was in. "They're watching you. Don't trust anyone." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, their weight pulling her deeper into confusion and fear. She had no idea who they were, but it was clear that whatever it was powerful. The warning had come too late. Emma could already feel the eyes upon her, even though she couldn't see them. As she slid into her car, the reality of her situation settled in. She was tangled in a web she hadn't asked for, caught between a man she loved and a world of danger she couldn't fully understand. Tom had kept her in the dark for so long. Now, everything she thought she knew about him was in question. Had it all been a lie? Had she ever truly known him? The headlights of her car flickered on as she started the engine, the familiar hum of the vehicle offering little comfort. Emma gripped the wheel tightly, her knuckles white, as she drove. She had to find Tom. She had to confront him, demand the truth, and get answers once and for all. The drive felt endless. The city streets blurred past, familiar yet foreign in her heightened state of fear. Every turn, every street corner, felt like it brought her closer to an uncertain future. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following her, always just a few steps behind. The paranoia that had been building inside her since the phone call now gripped her completely. She needed to reach him. She had to. Minutes stretched into hours. Finally, she pulled up in front of Tom's apartment complex, her heart pounding in her chest. The place was dark, the windows unlit, as if nothing had changed. But something inside Emma had shifted. The place that once felt like home now felt cold and unfamiliar. With a deep breath, she got out of the car, locking it behind her. She walked quickly toward the entrance, her footsteps echoing through the empty parking lot. There was no turning back now. This was the moment of reckoning. She had no idea what she was about to face, but she couldn't keep running. The truth had to come out. When she reached Tom's door, she hesitated for only a moment before knocking sharply. The sound echoed in the quiet hallway. She didn't wait long before the door cracked open, revealing Tom standing in front of her. His expression faltered for a brief moment when he saw her, his eyes widening in surprise. "Emma?" His voice was soft, cautious. "What are you doing here?" "You know why I'm here," she said, her voice firm despite the uncertainty swirling inside her. "I need answers, Tom. All of them. No more lies." Tom stepped back, allowing her inside. As soon as the door closed behind them, Emma felt the weight of the room settle on her. She had waited for this moment for so long, and now that it was here, she didn't know if she was ready. "Emma, Tom began, his voice shaky. "I never wanted you to get involved in any of this. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Emma repeated, her voice rising with disbelief. "You kept me in the dark for months, Tom. You lied to me, you hid everything. How is that protecting me?" "I didn't want to drag you into this," he said, his eyes filled with guilt. "There's so much you don't understand. I thought I could handle it on my own, but it's bigger than both of us. I never wanted you to be part of this dangerous world." Emma's anger flared. "Dangerous world? What are you talking about, Tom? You've been working with people who—" "I didn't have a choice," he interrupted, his voice rising in frustration. "I never wanted any of this. But I got caught up in something I couldn't control. These people, they don't care about anyone. They'll stop at nothing to get what they want." "And what do they want?" Emma asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. "They want power, Emma," Tom said, his tone grave. "They're part of a network that controls everything behind the scenes, businesses, governments, criminal organizations. They use people like me to do their dirty work, and if you get too close to the truth, they'll eliminate you. No questions asked. Emma could feel the shock of his words settling over her like a heavy fog. So that's it? You've been working with them? All this time? Tom nodded, his eyes pained. I didn't want to, but I had no choice. They have leverage over me. Over my family. If I didn't cooperate, they would have killed the people I care about. They threatened to destroy everything. Emma's heart dropped as she processed the weight of his confession. Her mind raced, trying to piece together everything she had learned in the past few days. Tom had been living a lie, protecting her by keeping her in the dark. But how could she ever forgive him for that? So, what now? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What are we supposed to do? We run, Tom said, his voice urgent. We leave everything behind. We disappear. It's the only way to stay safe. Emma's heart pounded. Was it really that simple? Was running away from everything the only option they had left? A sudden knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Emma's heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively stepped closer to Tom. He froze, his eyes wide with fear. He looked like a man who knew what was coming next. We don't have much time, Tom whispered. Get out of here. Go. But it was too late. The door burst open with force, and two men stepped inside. They were tall, dressed in dark suits, their faces expressionless. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the men, the same ones who had been following her. The same ones who had sent the threatening messages. Tom stepped in front of her, his body tense. No, he said, his voice firm. Not her. You'll have to go through me first. The men didn't flinch. Step aside, Tom, one of them said, his voice cold. We don't have time for this. Emma's heart raced. She knew they were here for Tom. They weren't just going to let him go. They had come for him, and they weren't leaving without him. You can't take him, Emma said, her voice shaking but defiant. You'll have to go through me. The men exchanged a glance before moving toward her. Tom's eyes widened in panic. No, Emma, get out of here now. But Emma stood her ground. She wasn't going to run anymore. She wasn't going to let them take Tom without a fight. As the men advanced, the room seemed to close in around them. Emma could feel her pulse racing in her veins, the adrenaline coursing through her as the confrontation neared its peak. The truth had finally come to light. But would it be enough to save them both?